Well, it looks like Halloween came a little early this year with Alien Romulus, a 2 hour long, harrowing, dark, and suspenseful science fiction sequel to the movie Alien. Directed by Fede Alvarez. I probably butchered that name, but he's a good dude. With a budget of $80 million. This one takes place 20 years after the events of the first Alien, but 37 years before the events of the sequel, Aliens. So if anyone's wondering where this one fits on the timeline, it's comfortably between the two. Suffice to say, though, it was a very engaging and interesting cast. They got the job done, and nobody was too big, which really kind of helps alien movies usually. You want to get people that are engaging and interesting and charming, the kind of people you want to root for, or people you want to hate, without getting any giant names to kind of like jars the vibe. And the vibe of this one definitely was slow burn horror, and eventually towards the end it was man-made horrors beyond comprehension, which was probably the biggest pull for this one. Besides the special effects and the music and the acting and everything else, what really made this film special was the unique aspects that it brought to the franchise and the new things that it was doing with already tried and tested tropes and special effects and horror surprise elements that have been done before. And this is a spoiler review, so some of the special additions or things that surprised me, jumped out at me at the beginning. I really love the scene where the zero gravity kicked in and they were shooting at xenomorphs, and this led to all of the acid from their blood floating in the air weightlessly. But then whenever the next gravity purge would happen and the gravity would kick back on, that would all shoot down to the bottom of the ship, eat right through it, and you would have yourself a hole. So that was really, really cool. I've never seen anyone try to navigate a floating field of their acid blood before. I was surprised that she was killing as many as she was with the gun that she had. And obviously the huge thing was that creepy Slender Man looking hybrid. I don't think that's ever been done before, a human xenomorph hybrid, but it was disgusting. Creepy, but it retained its rapid evolution and its unquenchable thirst for blood. It was very interesting, very creepy, strange, and tragic turn of events that even led to its creation. As one of the characters that was trying to just get off their shitty system, a planet where you would never see the sun, as smog just blocked out the light 24/7, is basically an entire planet of Amazon warehouses. That's where they were trying to escape from. So as they go up and start investigating this floating space station that's in the orbit, they're looking for a way out. They're looking for life pods. They're looking for enough fuel to be able to sleep for a 9-year trip to another star system. It's an escape film, and you really do want to root for all the characters involved, except probably the bigoted one. Even though they try to justify his hatred, they stuff it down your throat every 5 seconds of the film, just how much he hates synthetics, that it's just either they think that you forgot at some point in the film, or it's pretty much his entire personality and they weren't sure what else to write for him. One of the characters in particular just absolutely hated synthetics, bullied the one that they brought to try and get through the doors and stuff. And oh yeah, it was constant. Never had a breath where he wasn't bitching about synthetics or hoping they die or whatever. trying to make sure he mentioned how he thinks they're not real people, whatever, but non-stop. But by and large, though, another one of the surprising and fun elements was that at one point, with about 40 minutes until the space station crashes into the asteroid belt, we have 3 characters, 2 of whom are human, who need to go through a room of the parasite crawlers and the facehuggers. So they turn the temperature of the room up to 98.6 to try and creep through it quietly, because these things apparently can't see, so they use heat and they use sound. So they figured if they tried to blend into the room, then they wouldn't be caught. And I don't know if I've ever seen that in another film before, where characters have tried to stealth their way around facehuggers before. I don't think I've ever seen that. And it was only more interesting when the pregnant woman was stuck in a different room with a rapidly developing xenomorph. So she walkies one of the characters that's in that situation where he needs to be silent and he needs to not have any changes in body temperature or sweat. So that was pretty intense. There were several jump scares. A couple of them got me. Most of them didn't, because they were pretty typical, like dead body and then really loud music snare. And those usually are artificial. So like when you have to use the any extra sound to try and make the audience jump at your visuals, then the visuals might not quite be startling enough on their own to do it. And not knocking them at all, but the ones where it was kind of artificial and pumped up, I didn't really get much. It was always the ones that were the most organic and the most natural that would actually kind of get me, where you would just see something on screen that was creepy as hell or just wasn't supposed to be there. And those are the moments that really make you squirm in your seat a little more and wonder what's going to happen next and what fate will befall these poor bastards. And one thing that on first viewing that I initially would assumed would probably be somewhat controversial was the inclusion of the same synthetic that Ian Holmes played in the first Alien movie. And they actually used AI to get his likeness and his voice into the film and onto the synthetic. And there were some points where you could kind of tell that there was a little bit of extra on the CG put into his face, but it wasn't quite as terribly jarring as, resurrecting the, his name's escaping me, Moff Tarkin or something from Star Wars, or Leia. It wasn't quite as bad as that, or as the young Luke from Disney Plus. It was a bit more organic to the world, even if it wasn't organic to us in terms of special effects, because you kind of expect synthetics to look a little wonky, especially after that many years of and after sustaining that much damage. So in my head, it kind of felt normal, but also a little bit off. But I assumed that it was going to be controversial because everybody's been really up in arms about the AI thing and the justifications or lack thereof of using AI to resurrect dead actors or to give performances from actors who either have passed on or just wouldn't have wanted to do it, or just the ethical quandary of, is it okay to kind of do something like that without their express written consent? And turns out, from the articles that I read, the entire production went out of its way, and Ridley Scott went out of his way as producer to work with Ian Holmes' widow and she did say in an interview for the film that Ian had kind of felt abandoned by Hollywood. They hadn't really given him anything after the Hobbit films, and they really just weren't there, and the roles weren't coming in. And even though he kind of wanted to be more involved in some of these franchises, so it was kind of like a fulfillment of his wishes in a certain way, letting him get back into these films, even though it wasn't him. But also the dilemma of you're taking work from actors, that was also solved because they did have an actor on set every day doing the actual motions physically and saying lines, and then later on in post they would just change it and make it look and sound like Ian Holmes was doing the his synthetic. So it was, as you know, it's not something I'm terribly worried about, or it's not something I'm going to get up in arms or grab a sign and petition about. But even if it is something that would bother others, I think most people could probably be rest assured that this was done with the utmost taste and class, and was not intended at all to be any kind of negative. Honestly, the word doesn't even, I'm not even sure what word fits there, but it wasn't intended to be negative in any way. It seems like something that was done out of love for him and the character that he was playing, and it seemed like a character that is a lot more easily portrayed in this way, and it's a lot easier to justify adding a little extra or doing weird things with him, because at the end of the day it's supposed to be a robot, so different lifespans and all that. But yeah, it was really cool though to see his character again, and it's always very interesting to see what kind of, just how much they will cling to their mission for their damn company, and how much the company will want to have an influence over everything that happens and insist upon getting their way at all costs, and at the expense of any and all lives that may be in the vicinity of any such mission. But I think another thing that was really exciting about this film was that it took place in a time where not a lot is known by humans about the xenomorphs yet, per se. Like there's some general knowledge, but frankly, most of the people in the film probably knew significantly less than usual, except for maybe a prequel, but also the audience. Any audience who's seen most of or all the films was so much significantly ahead of the knowledge of most of the characters in the film. And honestly, it's kind of exciting for me. I like to see people who have no idea what they're dealing with try to figure something out quickly in 2 hours, rather than come in thinking everyone knows what they're dealing with, or it's a battle of some sort between creatures that already kind of have each other's number. It's always been less interesting to me. And also increasing the horror aspect, where the characters just have zero clue what the hell to expect, or what the hunting patterns may be. And that's a big part of why many people thought this was inspired by Alien Isolation, because the horror aspects are there, the frightening slow burn at first, but then rapid paced frightened attack, for lack of a better word. It is kind of similar to how the game and its AI learns how you're playing, and it learns how to hunt you best, and then it starts doing it. So for the first, about maybe 30 minutes, 40 tops, it's pretty normal. It's pretty sci-fi. It's pretty standard, actually, standard fare. And there's not a whole lot happening. Bad things are going to happen, but you're kind of just like getting exposition, getting to know the characters, learning what makes them tick and their personalities, learning what their backstory is and what they're trying to escape. And you're just kind of hoping that all of the, well, obviously not all, you're just hoping that any of the favorites you're picking in the first half hour might make it towards the end. And you're kind of like earmarking people that you hope survive. But yeah, honestly, a big part of the thrill of this one was how much it seemed like it was inspired by the game. And even though it wasn't the same characters, obviously it wasn't Ripley's daughter, and it took place, I think, before the game would have taken place, it was still very much in the vein of hunting down this mission, this previous mission, looking for answers, even if not all the characters even knew that could have been a possibility, or even if they didn't know anything about that previous mission or Ripley. It was very fascinating to see something that was could have been an isolation game, could have been an isolation film, and as little likelihood as there is of actually getting an Alien Isolation film, this may be as close as we'll get. If there ever was a sequel to Romulus, I would assume it would be called Ramus, to get the other Roman brother in there. They didn't slam the door entirely on the possibility of maybe thinking about timelines and how long it could possibly be afterwards, possibly just going that route, just going with Alien Isolation, or just taking elements from it, going with Ripley's daughter. I think all of those possibilities would be exciting and fun, because as far as you can really tell, it looks like the prequels have sort of run their course, and there's only so much more you can either explain or explore or reveal about these things until they really start to lose a lot of the magic. And it's kind of like Indiana Jones, where a lot of people one of their favorite lines is, there's only 2 Alien movies. So if you want to keep the goodwill, you want to keep doing things that actually interest the audience, but also do justice to the original source material and to the creatures involved. And they're at their best when you know less about them, when they're on the hunt, when there's no predator involved, and when you're just terrified, but also if they're doing something new. So like the human hybrid, that was new. And it was creepy, but it was also very organic. It didn't feel like it was forced in. It felt like it was a natural result of some pretty tragic and terrible circumstances and unfortunate company meddling. And so you actually feel like it could have happened, and it could happen. It's horrible that it did, and you don't want to see it ever again. It's really creepy, and it might give you nightmares for a long time. But point being, if you're doing things new with the franchise, you don't run out of the goodwill. You can keep it going. But if you lose the chance to just keep pumping out prequels and explaining and over-explaining what these things are, where they came from, what they're made of, what kind of consequences that has if you're able to synthesize their blood or something. It's just like, there's only so far you can poke into the past to when you get to the point where people don't want to know, and they'd rather have some things be mysteries. They'd rather some things be left unexplained, and they'd at least rather try and have a more natural pathway to it, where it's revealed in story rather than just kind of exposition dumped or prequeled in there. It would be more exciting for an audience to be able to go on a journey, to watch new things going down, and to see new directors take on the iconography of it, while also trying to put their own personal creative touch on not just the franchise, but on horror films and sci-fi films in general. Because horror sci-fi is, unfortunately, it's massively underproduced. There's a lot of basic horror. There's a lot of really bad horror, lazy horror, Hallmark horror. So to have high quality stories and great horror stories, it's rare, and it's something that needs to be cultivated more. And these films have always kind of inspired a lot of filmmakers and a lot of writers. And hopefully, if they kind of keep going in a way that makes the most sense and actually is the best for everyone, the franchise and the audience and everything, then ideally they'd be able to inspire entirely new generations of horror filmmakers who not just want to make scary movies, but they also want to make good scary movies. And there just aren't enough of those. Just like there aren't enough of just about any type of good film at the moment. Adult comedies have pretty much disappeared from theaters. Some of them stream, but for the most part, they just kind of don't exist anymore. Because you used to get things like The Wedding Crashers and all these great films that just kind of went extinct in the age of the superhero and the big budget and the cinematic universes. You kind of lose out on the smaller things and the stuff that used to get groups of adult friends into theaters, where now they really just kind of don't go at all. And if they do, they're going to a movie that mostly was made for and appeals to teenagers. But anyway, it's kind of getting sidetracked. The film itself, I think it was excellent. The cinematography was absolutely gorgeous. It looked like 2001, an Alien Odyssey. It was just so good. It was beautiful. I could have mistaken a lot of these scenes for interstellar scenes. It was very gorgeous, very well done. You could tell there was a lot of thought and effort put into it. And it seems like it's a step in the right direction. Especially after films that were either misses or just not quite fully executed to the best that they could have been. A lot of people have issues with Prometheus. I think it was pretty great, but many people have issues with it. And it did seem to have a couple of inconsistencies, and there were rewrites that kind of took away from the original story that was trying to be told. And a big part of the problem with Covenant was, I think, just inconsistency. As great as Michael Fassbender's performance was, there were just massive story inconsistencies. But a lot of the benefits of Romulus is that it kind of rejuvenates the franchise in a way that it needed. And it couldn't have another mixed film. It couldn't have survived another one of those prequels or anything that would have disappointed. So as much as this mandate seemed to be get back to the roots, get back to the story people care about, get back to the locations and the setting that people want to see, get back to the hunt, get back to the xenomorph in its element, it was done with an extra mandate of making sure not to just get formulaic with it, making sure not to just be boring or retreading the same ground. It was done out of love, and it seemed to have been done out of respect. And it was a lot of fun to watch. And it seems like it hit home, and honestly, in a year kind of like this one, it was easily one of the best films of the year, if not the number one. I think a lot of people would probably put it in their top 5 this year, and I'd be shocked with most lists that wouldn't put it up there. And some lists with number 1, I wouldn't even be that shocked. It was just very solid, very beautiful film. And as much as I'm okay with doing some spoilers, I just don't want to spoil too much of it. I want as many people as possible to try and get out there and watch it, because I think that you'll enjoy it. It was just a lot of fun, and it was a great time. So if you're able to, get out in theaters and see it, or whenever it's streaming, hit a rent, or take a look around to where it might be free, if it's coming to a platform that you have, because this one's honestly really worth it. I couldn't endorse it enough. It's one of the really good Alien movies, and it's kind of like a return to form, but also a new direction that's very exciting. And with the success it's having at the box office, I look forward to seeing more of them. I hope they go for another one not too long from now, because honestly there were some things, some stones left unturned, and I would love to see them turn those stones over in a sequel. And until then, be on the lookout for Gladiator 2 review, and be on the lookout for Black Sails review. Both of those are coming soon. And hope everyone stays safe and has a good fall. And prepare for winter, unfortunately, as we all must.